Hey everybody, I'm Andy Ostroy. Welcome to the back room.
The kind of slash and burn politics that we're seeing right now, that doesn't have to be who we are. We can be better. And it has nothing to do, by the way, with political correctness or being too woke. It's about fundamental values that my grandparents from Kansas taught me. Values I grew up with. Values you grew up with. Values we try to teach our kids. Values we learn in churches and mosques and synagogues and temples. Honesty, fairness, opportunity, hard work. Values that Josh Shapiro and John Fetterman stand for. Values that Joe Biden stands for. Values that were enshrined in our founding documents a few miles from here. A clarion call for freedom and equality that Philly's own Liberty Bell represents. That's what America stands for. That's who we are.
That was former President Barack Obama at a rally last week, getting out the vote. It was incredibly inspiring, transcendent. I mean, when I listen to Obama, I still get shivers up and down my entire body because nobody delivers a message like Obama. And people listened. They went out and voted. They helped make this midterm election perhaps one of the most, if not the most successful for a president in his first midterms. And I think really helped change the course of history. There were also incredible moments that occurred that night, moments like this.
I have a privilege right now, a privilege, as someone who was the Democratic nominee. I have the privilege to concede this race to J.D. Vance because the way this country operates is that when you lose an election, you concede. And you respect the will of the people, right? We can't have a system where if you win, it's a legitimate election, and if you lose, someone stole it.
That was Tim Ryan, who lost his bid to be senator in Ohio to J.D. Vance. He's a class act. He ran an amazing campaign, but he also gave an amazing concession speech. That's how you do it in America. That's how you do it in a democracy. That's what's called a peaceful transition of power. It's also respecting the rule of law, respecting the institution of our free and fair elections, which is the bedrock of a democracy. Because if we don't do that, we don't have a democracy. I want to play you something that Trump said this week, which, as far as I'm concerned, probably ranks as my favorite Trump quote ever. Like, if you just go into a room full of psychiatrists and say, I'm going to play you just one thing, from that one thing, can you completely diagnose someone's psychosis? The answer would be yes, and that clip is this.
You've endorsed more than 330 candidates this election cycle. Tonight, win or lose, the results for Republicans, how much of that will be because of Donald Trump?
Well, I think if they win, I should get all the credit, and if they lose, I should not be blamed at all, okay? But it'll probably be just the opposite.
There you have it, in a nutshell. If they win, I get all the credit. If they lose, I get no blame. Inside the mind of a maniac.
It's a bad night for Donald Trump.
Very bad night for Donald Trump.
It is a bad night for Trump.
What I can tell you is the biggest loser tonight is Donald Trump.
Donald Trump was the biggest loser of the night.
He's the biggest loser in American politics.
Donald Trump's not going to like this.
And without question, Donald Trump was a tremendous loser this week. But for me, Donald Trump's been a loser since 2020. And that's only seemed to have empowered him and made it worse. This country has been more divided. There's been more toxicity. It's led to violent insurrection. So the key question is not whether he's a loser, but is he finally going to be gone at some point very soon? Is this reign of terror that he has showered down on this country, on our political landscape, is it coming to an end? And here's something from presidential historian John Meacham.
What happened last night, it seems to me, is you have, as Churchill once said, when it comes to Trump, it may not be the end. It may not even be the end of the beginning of the end, but it was the end of the beginning.
And lastly, the New York Post today, on their front cover, has a giant picture of Donald with the headline, Trumpty Dumpty. And it goes on to say, Don, who couldn't build a wall, had a great fall. Can all the GOP's men put the party back together again? The New York Post, you should know, is owned by Rupert Murdoch. And when you lose Murdoch, I think it's over. And I think that's sort of a punctuation on what John Meacham just said. Another thing that you can point to is that at the rally this past weekend, Donald Trump had only around 7,000 people. They were utterly bored to tears. They were leaving early. It was literally 2 hours of nothing but nonstop grievance. Nothing really about the candidates, the party, the future, what it offers voters. It's really just him for 2 hours whining like a little bitch about how poorly he's been treated. And I think that's another indication of things to come as well. Maddie, what do you think about everything?
A couple of things. I'm sorry Jen isn't here to join us, but her prediction that Rovember was coming certainly came true, because we saw that the Dodd ruling really flipped the script on the single issue voter. And now we have the left having a single issue, and we see that in the Gen Z vote. And then lastly, I mean, there's plenty to say, but lastly, we really sort of saved two democracies for the price of one, because we really can't emphasize enough how important this vote was for Ukraine, because now they actually will continue to get funding. Even with Kevin McCarthy, he's going to have such a slim majority. And we already know that, many Republicans in the House did vote with Democrats for funding. And I just want to, shout out to Ukraine for being saved.
Yeah, no, those are very important facts. And I think the key takeaway is, like you said, even if the House flips, the Republicans are not going to have the kind of influence and control that one might think they would have, especially with such a slim margin. They're probably going to focus their entire time on impeaching Biden and Merrick Garland and Marjorie Taylor Greene going berserk. And so the chaos that's going to ensue in the next 2 years is probably going to ultimately be very good for Democrats in 24. Very happy to say Pat Ryan, our local guy, Pat Ryan, New York 18, is a winner.
And it was another backroom bump, I would have to add.
I mean, 2 appearances in the back room. I mean, I don't want to sound like Trump here, but I think we have to take all the credit, man.
Is there another explanation?
It just is what it is. No, Pat ran an amazing race, and we are thrilled. He's an incredible candidate, an incredible guy, and we're thrilled that he's in Congress. We're still waiting for the official results, but my God, it looks like Lauren Boebert lost. I mean, how fucking awesome is that? That's beyond awesome. That's like better than Madison Cawthorn's loss. My God.
Yeah, I mean, that will be the greatest pleasure of this election.
Yeah, I think 99% of the vote is in. I mean, I don't know what the rules are in Colorado, if they have to do a recount or something, if it's under, I mean, it's like 70 votes or something.
It's so close that if there's any rule, I would think there'd be a recount of that. Lastly, on Georgia, obviously, we're going to have a runoff, but we probably won't need it to control the Senate.
Hopefully.
We don't know, but it's
Arizona's looking good. I know you're feeling pretty optimistic about Nevada with Cortez Masto still hanging on and looking like, depending upon where the votes come in, like from Clark County, she could get the lion's share of that. I think, what's his name?
Laxalt.
Yeah, Laxalt needs to get like almost all of the remaining votes in order to win. So that's interesting. News came out this morning about inflation. We're seeing a pretty appreciable deceleration in the numbers, which is great. I know you joked before that now it comes out like 2 days after the election, but it could help in Georgia.
Yeah, I mean, Georgia may just determine whether the Democrats control the Senate or Joe Manchin controls the Senate.
Yeah, well, I think if in December we have a runoff, and perhaps by the time that runoff occurs, if we have 2 months in a row of this kind of deceleration in inflation, that's going to be huge, huge.
Also, I would point out that Kemp will not be on the ballot. And, a lot of Republicans split vote. They came in to vote for Kemp because they really liked him. Obviously, he won pretty handily, but he's not going to be on the ballot.
But interestingly, guess who else is going to be on the ballot in that runoff? Trump. It's going to be real interesting. Don't forget, Mr. Cliffhanger said November 15th, I'm giving a big announcement. Now, what is he going to do? And I want to get into this with our guest, Chris Matthews, shortly. But that's going to be really interesting because if you have the kind of memory I have, Trump cost the Republican Party Georgia 2 years ago. So if he's out there next week, A, saying, I'm running for president, and B, it's all rigged, my God, I mean, we're going to have history repeat itself. So the last thing I want to mention is we have never really talked about the progress we're making here in the back room in terms of audience and stuff like that. We're doing really well in the United States, especially in the news and commentary section. I mean, there are thousands and thousands of podcasts, and we're ranking pretty high. But we just this morning learned we are number 1 in Latvia.
You can't beat that.
I mean, there are great people in this world putting out great podcasts like Kara Swisher and, who's got On and Pivot with Scott Galloway and so many others. And we are number 1 in Latvia. Fuck if I know why, but we've been ranking great in Singapore, Japan, Canada, Sweden, Belgium. New Zealand. Remember when Jerry Lewis, what was he, the greatest singer or something in France?
Yeah.
And David Hasselhoff was the most respected actor in the world, in Europe or something.
I think Jen's right. We are the David Hasselhoff of Latvia.
Yeah, so I'll take it. I mean, if we're going to be for some reason hugely popular overseas, great. In addition to really making some amazing strides in the United States. So we're going to end all that, and we're going to bring out the inimitable Chris Matthews. He's a journalist and political commentator, columnist, author, television host, professor. His 15 years in politics and government includes serving as a speechwriter for President Jimmy Carter. He served as an administrative assistant to House Speaker Tip O'Neill. He was columnist for the San Francisco Chronicle, syndicated columnist and Washington bureau chief for the San Francisco Examiner. Most notably, perhaps, host of MSNBC's Hardball with Chris Matthews. He's a prolific author. His books include 2011's Jack Kennedy, Elusive Hero, and his 2021 memoir, This Country, My Life on Politics and History. Chris, welcome into the back room.
Thank you.
So we here in the back room, before we get into the meaty stuff, we like to try to get a window into people's souls. And the way we do that is to ask a couple of questions, one at the beginning, one at the end. So I'm going to ask you something that you probably have never been asked before. Are you a dog or a cat person?
Dog.
Dog.
All the way.
All the way.
I keep thinking about getting a really big dog, a big friend to live on Nantucket with. But since I travel a lot, and I don't know, I've never figured out. I guess I could probably get a dog walker from the neighborhood, but I still want somebody to like the dog. So,
and do you have?
We used to have a black lab and lock him in the house when we went to work. It's terrible.
Yeah. So you don't have a dog now?
No, we had a black lab for the lifespan, 13 years. But next time I'm going to train him. A good month of training.
Training is important.
Teaching everybody there's only 4 words, mainly the dog's name, and stop using other language with the dog. Just keep it simple.
Well, did you ever see those videos where they teach dogs 290 words, like the dog?
Never seen that.
It's a famous book that was written about that.
Well, I'm sure they're advanced stage, but I just want, hey Lassie or Laddie. We had a dog named Laddie growing up, a collie. Hey, Laddie, come on in. And always, he'd go wandering off in the fields miles from our house and always came back for dinner.
Yeah. Well,
it was great.
Like a lot of men, I suppose. You sound like you emphatically are not a cat person on any level, because you answered my question really quickly.
Well, we had them. We used to pick them up they'd come by, and we lived in a sort of suburban area of Philadelphia, and they would come by and we pick them up and adopt them for a while, and then they'd bite somebody. And my dad would say, I'm taking him to the hospital. That's sort of like
for what? For a checkup
sort of
or euthanasia?
Remember, that was Yellowstone. Yellowstone in that movie? They take you to the train station.
Oh,
There's no train station.
No, train stations throughout history are not good things. for sure.
I think he took him somewhere near the hospital and booted him out of the car. That's what I think.
All right. Well, we'll leave it at that. So you have your memoir, which is This Country, My Life in Politics and History. I think it's out in paperback now.
Yeah, it is. Better looking paperback because it has a picture of my mom on the cover, and that's kind of neat.
Oh, that's cool.
In fact, this was from a trip to Washington when we were kids.
Mm-hmm.
You see that?
Yeah. No, I wanted to ask you about that because you talk
mom
about
on the
that.
right and my brothers.
Mm-hmm. You
And
talk
down
about
at the bottom is me and President Obama.
Mm-hmm. You talk in your book about that. I think it's that trip. You talk about Washington, D.C., calling it dazzling. And you say, quote, "It's a place in the sun that radiated history and honored the country's great leaders. If I hadn't been taken to Washington that spring of 1953 when I was 7, I don't think I would have followed the same road in life." It sounds like that was quite a trip, and you built a career eventually from that kind of inspiration. It's got to, in reflecting back on where we are today, it's got to make you sad, because if a 7-year-old kid goes to Washington today, can you really walk away inspired that same way, or is it just the opposite with what's going on?
Well, a lot of young kids in school have their senior trip to Washington around May, and you see the buses lining up every year about that time.
Mm-hmm.
And it is the city at its most beautiful, May and June. And it's sunny. It's much warmer than Philadelphia or New York. You really feel you're in a more tropical environment. It's just gorgeous. And all the cherry blossoms and everything are in bloom. And I just thought it was just an amazing, sunny, wonderful trip. We went to Mount Vernon and all the good places, and the Smithsonian, and see all those bicycles and trains, see all the stuff that it had. And it's all free. I always tell people, come to Washington. You can find a place to live. It's a great vacation because almost everything's free. Mm-hmm. Everything's free. You organize it. And I just thought I saw something I wanted. And when I came out of the Peace Corps in Africa and I came back home, I went to Chapel Hill to say hello to my friends. And then I went to Washington and said, this is my plan A. I don't have a plan B. I'm going to get a job as a speechwriter. I'm going to work like Ted Sorensen did for Jack Kennedy. Mm-hmm. And I'm going to get there. And I got there to the White House. And then Tip O'Neill, that amazing 6 years working as his right-hand man. It was quite amazing. I had great luck.
I don't know what specific conversation you might have had with your mom that day, but I would imagine back in the day, in the 50s and the 60s, even the 70s to some degree, parents could look at their 7-year-olds on a trip like that and say, someday you can grow up, work here, be a part of this incredible institution, politicians, respectful and try to change the world and blah, 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 blah. I mean, what does a parent say today to a 7-year-old, like, other than stay the hell away from this place, it's a cesspool? Isn't that sad?
Yeah, I think there's some of that, and I think, God, you can't talk about, the title of my book was This Country, because I remember Harry Truman. In the old clips, I'd see him talk about this country. This country doesn't believe in that. This country, he could actually speak with certitude about this country's opinion. Mm-hmm. Like there was one opinion. Like we had to drop the bomb in 45. We had to go to war after Pearl Harbor. We had to help Europe with the Marshall Plan. He could say, this is what America has to do. Mm-hmm. Today, I don't think there is that conclusiveness. I think a third of the country is loyal to Trump and believes his cultish lies about having won the election, which it runs against any common sense because it's the only election that people said was stolen, only his, without evidence. And yet they hold up that belief because if you don't hold up that belief, you can't run for office. You'll be ostracized by the base. But, a lot of this has changed this week. I get the feeling that Murdoch at Fox and a lot of Republicans are really reconsidering his selection of candidates. I mean, he picked Dr. Oz, he out of nowhere, and he made him the candidate for U.S. Senate from Pennsylvania, and he lost. Mm-hmm. I think McCormick would have won or could have had a better shot. I think Herschel Walker is a very hard sell.
Well, let's just stick on Pennsylvania for a second, because you're a Pennsylvania guy, you're a Philly guy, and so you obviously have much more than just a political interest. You spent years there as in your formative years.
Well, I ran for Congress there.
Yeah.
I tried tried for Congress.
How do you feel when someone like a Fetterman, who is such a antithetical, the guy's 6'7", he's full of tattoos, he wears a black hoodie, and he just had a stroke. Yet Pennsylvania voters, especially after listening to Dr. Oz attack him repeatedly, they came to the polls with compassion and empathy and understanding, and I don't want to say forgiveness, or I'd rather say acceptance.
And I think it's very tricky because I think you're a thoughtful person, not a partisan. If you could include some thoughtfulness with your enthusiasm for the Democratic side, you will say to yourself, I really don't know his condition.
Mm-hmm.
There are a lot of mysteries about he didn't release his medical records. I don't know whether his inability to listen to the spoken word is going to go away.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if a year from now he still has to have people put words up on a screen to hear them. This is a situation he has. And you have to ask yourself, that's a pretty big question. So alongside that question it's a binary choice.
Mm-hmm.
And you have to choose to pick him or Oz. Now, Oz I saw the polls on election day, certifiably from New Jersey. And I talked about that on Morning Joe the other day.
Yeah, I want to ask you to tell that story. Can you tell the story, the down the shore?
Down the shore. You say it like that, down the shore.
Sure.
Everybody in Philly, in the suburbs, all the way up to wherever you are, basically knows where the shore is. It's across Tacony Palmyra Bridge. It's Route 73. And in my day, working people that lived in that area would line up with their deck chairs all along the road there, the avenue, about 5 p.m. or 4 p.m. And they would sit there watching the bridge traffic, And the bridge traffic were the people coming home with their tans, coming back home from Wildwood, Atlantic City, Ocean City. They would have that happiness. They were so thrilled they were down there. And remember, Atlantic City was a huge deal in those days. And so they know where the shore is. They've never been anywhere else in the world. See, Philadelphia is not just Philadelphia. Philadelphia is the Delaware Valley. It's South Jersey. That's what it is. They will never in their lives go to Pittsburgh, ever. They will never in their lives probably go to New York. They don't go. My dad had never been to New York till I gave him a trip to New York when I was on television.
Wow.
And they don't go to these places. They go to Philly and down the shore. It's like Center City. It's down the shore. And so they know where this guy came from. And it never got out of their heads. He's running in the wrong place.
Right.
Why is he running against Cory Booker, Menendez, or somebody?
Yeah.
He belongs over there, just like we belong here. We belong here.
Fetterman ran some effective ads to that effect about him being from New Jersey.
Like just the same reason we're not going anywhere.
Mm-hmm.
The Philly people, they come to Philly. No, they don't.
Mm-hmm.
They've been in Philly, and they never leave. You know what I understand? It's very much a place to be.
Yeah.
And you don't move out, you don't move in. And so I think that captured our essence.
Well, I think that's, when you look at politics and try to think of it on a state by state level, every state is different. The people of every state.
Yeah, sure. Right. And Trump understood Pennsylvania. You know how he understood it? Trump understood that you're from Pennsylvania. You don't have a house down in Florida. You're not going anywhere in the wintertime. It's going to be cold. Mm-hmm. You have to have heating fuel. And you have to have gas or oil. Gas, probably. You have to have something to keep you warm.
Mm-hmm.
You have to have Social Security. You have to have Medicare and Medicaid for Alzheimer's. Okay, you just need all those things. And everybody knows that in Pennsylvania, and you don't touch it.
Mm-hmm.
And you don't want to go to war because you don't want your kids getting killed. And you want to war on China because they're taking our jobs away. And you want your kids to get a job close enough home they can drive home for a big weekend. Mm-hmm. Just that. So all they wanted, they don't want to be rich people. They don't have any idea what it's like to be rich, unfortunately. They want their social safety net, which they earned, and they're left alone, basically. So their kids can have a job and not have to drive away or get killed in a war. So Trump came along and said, no more stupid wars. I'm going to fight China, and I'm going to protect your Social Security. Mm-hmm. Jerry Ford never said that. Mm-hmm. The average Republican said, I'm going after your entitlement because there's a lot of waste in that. And the minute they hear that, they go, oh, my God, they did it again this time about a week before the election. All of a sudden, the Republicans are talking, I don't know who these people are. Why they're like, it's Rick Scott. What's the matter with this guy? Why is any of these people talking about cutting Social Security?
Yeah.
It's all people have. It is their retirement program. And when they get that 10% or 9% increase, that's a deal.
Yeah.
You know?
I'm almost
and
there.
Even I get it. I don't mind
I'm
it.
almost cashing in on that money myself soon.
It's there. And whatever retirement you've been lucky to get, you didn't just get a 401k. No, you want a real retirement.
That's Trump's evil genius.
Trump's smart.
Trump
is so smart.
Yeah, it's an evil genius, but as a New York billionaire, he understood what you said better than most politicians, and he milked it in a horribly toxic, divisive way.
He can still win in Pennsylvania with a wrong candidate. I think his numbers are even with Biden. I don't know what that means when people say 50, same disapproval, same approval. But the fact is, Biden's been president for 2 years, and it's about the same.
Let's talk. I want to talk about the midterms. Obviously, that's the big news of the week. The question is, what's the big takeaway? Did sanity and democracy win? Did Trumpism and autocracy lose? What did you take away this week?
New York governorship is a good race. Zeldin was running a great campaign. I mean, he got all the news. He got inched up at the end. But I talked to a WOR radio, Michael, one of the local guys there, and he told me it was Trump. That in the end, the New York voter, whether Jewish or Christian or whatever, they couldn't bring themselves to vote for Trump and against abortion. They just couldn't do it, especially Trump. So Trump killed that guy in the end. He helped him in the beginning, but in the end, he did deliver, 4 or 5 House seats. So, Sean Patrick Maloney lost his seat.
Yeah.
The head of the party, the head of the DCCC. So Trump helped. I think Trump still helps out west and parts in the South. But I'm not sure he didn't deliver Bucks County. He did. Well, that was the Republican, but all the Democratic collar counties, Chester and Delaware County and Montgomery, they all stuck.
So let's stick with Trump and Trumpism.
Trump is bad news to women because he supported getting rid of Roe v. Wade. No matter what he says.
But he represents so much that's bad and wrong. And I think voters...
Oh, he's a liar.
Yeah.
He's a liar.
But if you look at... you've been in politics for bazillions of years.
I've never met a liar like him.
Yeah.
Never. And he lost that election.
But everybody during, in the weeks leading up to an election, everyone loves, all the geeks love, what's the October surprise going to be? I want to ask you, how much do you think it factored into what we saw this week, the Republicans laughing and mocking about an 82-year-old man getting his head smashed in with a hammer?
I'm not sure that was I was talking to a college group up at Providence College, and only one kid in the class knew about it. And the rest are on TikTok and the political science.
But what about the suburban moms?
I think they heard about it. And first of all, I know Paul Pelosi. All this talk about him being a grandfather. I'm a grandfather too.
Me too.
He's not
Me too.
He's not Grandfather Lee. He's not some elderly person. He's this big regular guy, and he doesn't come across as needy that way. Maybe he likes to sit down like some of us do at certain ages, more than walking a lot. He's a regular guy, and smokes cigars, hangs out with the guys. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with being anything else, but the way they try to portray him in these ads and this scurrilous rumor mongering, it's really rotten. I mean, you get your head bashed in, and then they're lying about you. And why were they doing it? Because that's what they do.
Well, can we play, Mandy, you have that clip of Andy, I don't know if you heard what Andy Biggs said, but I want to play you something that just came out.
We can't wait to get back to Washington, D.C. with some new Arizona congressmen. And we're going to show Nancy Pelosi the door very shortly. Don't let it hit you on the backside, Nancy. Hey, she's losing the gavel but finding the hammer.
Oh, Jesus.
Too soon? Is that too soon? I didn't know. I just didn't know.
I mean, how do you listen to something like that and not say, this party's dead? They are literally dying, maybe not so slow a death, with comments like that.
Well, it's social media. It's the way people speak anonymously. The way people talk on Twitter. They say things they're terrible because they are They know things are terrible. They don't put their name to it exactly. And Trump saying Senator or Governor sanctimonious. This cheap, the stuff we all felt like I felt for. I thought the schoolyard stuff was fun. You know, he's making fun of all these Republicans. He's making fun of little Jeb and not little Jeb, little Marco. He's making fun of it's schoolyard stuff. It's exactly what I felt in high school in grade school when I was there. The big guy, Moose was his nickname, would go around and scare everybody, and the neighborhoods were changing.
Yeah, we had Fat Phil, which I'm horrified that that's what we called him but we were 9. We were 9. We weren't the fucking president of the United States.
And you would say, you say, who's Moose? They say, you're saying, who's Moose? And they're going to meet you. They introduce you to Moose. I mean, it was just crap. And that's what Trump is. He's a bully. And he gets somebody smaller than him, and he pounces on him. But Pelosi is a gentleman. I mean, it's just, I don't know how to describe it, but of all the people to be talked about that way is pretty sick. And I think Nancy, as tough as nails as she is, I think she was affected by it.
She said she's going to, this is going to factor into her decision about leadership going forward, which is really a shame, but it does sometimes take a personal tragedy in your life to make you rethink most of your major decisions, you know?
Well, it's a collateral damage.
Yeah. So what was your big takeaway? Was this in your mind?
I was shocked. I thought, first of all, I'm not going to plead completely guilty in this, because every time there was an interview with a citizen, a voter, they were saying the economy all the time. Everybody was saying gas prices, food prices, and that's all legitimate. They didn't say abortion, and all of a sudden abortion seemed to loom up, at least in the NBC poll, high up again. Now, clearly, it would be more of a Northeastern thing, I would think, because coastal liberals would be more sensitive to it, even though their states will be protecting them. New York's not going to have an anti-abortion situation, and Pennsylvania will probably be fine too. And so it's more like they don't like the idea of denial of freedom. And I said this the other day. I think freedom protects our right to vote, and our right to vote protects our freedom. They work together. You can't have one without the other. If you can't have elections, you can't have freedom. And if you have freedom, it's because you have elections. It's the way it works. You have to protect yourself. And the voter has to be able to say, this day that I'm voting is the day that we run the country. Everybody who votes on election day is part of an enterprise of democracy. It's not the pundits or any pollsters or anybody else. On election day, once the first vote is cast, it's about the voter. The voter runs the country. I know people find this hard to believe, but 435 members of the House are in or out, depending on what the voters want. Now, there's a lot of habitual voting. I love that what Abby Phillips said on CNN the other day, the DNA in each state, because each state has its own DNA.
Exactly.
What do you think they mean? What do you think they mean in Georgia when they say Georgia values? And what do you think that means?
Not my
slavery. Slavery. What do you think they're talking about? John Warner, I did like when he was alive. He's a good guy. But he used to say Virginia traditions. Right. Come on, what is that about? You know, they're not saying New York traditions. They're saying Virginia.
Yeah, but that's the connective tissue to make America great again. That's what that's all about. That's all that means.
Well, it's ingrained with slavery, and it's all there. And that I think the people that are voting for Herschel, most of them are just old Seggies. Not all of them thinking about segregation today, but they got that whole culture. They don't like this guy from Martin Luther King's pulpit being their senator. They just don't want that. You know, it was about getting back somebody that could vote like them, like Tim Scott, who could vote like a conservative.
As a guy who spent many years on television, I want to ask you about the media for a second, because, you know, there's the polls and then there's the vibe. The vibe was certainly like, oh my God, Democrat, it's going to be a bloodbath. The polls weren't showing that, but the vibe was, that's what the vibe was about.
And Chuck Todd called me a couple of days before the election and said there's something turning in the other direction. He saw it in the numbers.
But what is it about the media that loves this kind of talk, that loves the media seems to talk about waves. No one else talks about waves, but the media loves the waves.
Okay, let's give an example. So I thought Roe v. Wade was the best thing Republicans ever had going for them, because you can talk about the values of being opposed to abortion, and that's pretty much a common value. Most people say, yeah, you have the right to an abortion, but really, most of them don't even use the word. I mean, they have reproductive health, women's health. It's not a word people really, in most districts, comfortable with using abortion
Mm-hmm.
itself.
Mm-hmm.
But they want the option. Fathers want the option, no matter what anybody says. They want the option. My dad used to say, I said, what do you think about parental consent? He said, what's the purpose of that? He didn't want to hear about it. He didn't have any daughters, but he didn't want to hear it. It's like, oh, can I have an abortion, Dad? No. You don't come to me with that question. You go to some judge or something. But I think that was a vote that people didn't want to talk about.
Mm-hmm.
That's why we didn't hear much about it. But the country is happy with Roe v. Wade. I wish they would settle on it and not go to some extreme, unrestricted method of everything is okay to the last minute, because it just strikes. Pat Moynihan, the senator from New York, used to say that's near to what do you call it? Killing babies. And he said it's terrible. And so I think they were happy with the first trimester. Getting into the second trimester, people say that's your call. Once it gets later, it becomes more of a societal responsibility, I think.
Yeah, I mean, look, we had Dobbs and we had the Kansas referendum. This week we had Kentucky, Michigan, California. This is such an example of where the Republican Party is absolutely clueless and tone deaf in terms of what America wants when it comes to reproductive rights. You would think after all these years, they would get smart and say, okay, this is not a winnable strategy for us. But yet, why do they keep going back to this issue, even when it's clearly hurting them in an almost existential way?
It's in their culture. The Republican Party has a mix of pragmatic suburbanites and traditionalists, and they cannot offend one of their traditionalists. So they go over to the evangelicals, and they say, we got to honor their tradition too. We have to be careful not to do this. It's just like the Democratic Party. Pelosi has to keep account of the squad and to fund the police crowd. And they're there, and they're part of the constituents. And I think they're wrong. I remember working on MSNBC the night that looked like Bernie was going to win everything, New Hampshire, Iowa, everything. And people around me didn't care. They acted like, well, this is going to happen. I said, Bernie, the guy likes Maduro, the Castro brothers, and Daniel Ortega, and says he likes Copenhagen and Denmark. Well, come on, this guy's going to lose the general election easily. Trump will thump him. Don't you get it? So both sides of the political spectrum have not just their blind sides. They don't want to offend people on the left or on the right. I'm including journalists. Journalists don't want to.
But there's a false equivalency with comparing, at least in my opinion, the left wing craziness with the right wing craziness. As bad as a Bernie Sanders, and I'm not a Bernie Sanders fan overall, but as bad as some people would think he is, he's not denying free and fair elections. He's not advocating the overthrow of the government. He's not making jokes about. I mean, when the Scalise shooting took place, he was on the floor of the Congress that day, unequivocally condemning what happened. So, and that, I think that's what makes it easier for a Pelosi ultimately to control, because the people she's trying to control are rational and sane at the end of the day. We're living in an environment today where it must be crazy for you to look at all this stuff coming from where you come from, and I'm 63 years old, so I have a pretty decent frame of reference too. But I remember meeting Nixon at LaGuardia Airport and thinking I just met God, and I was a liberal. I had a respect for the office. I had a respect for the institution, and I didn't look. It wasn't tribal the way it is today. Today it is nuts. People are, they're literally killing each other.
Yeah, I think people are rational. I don't think Bernie Sanders will run again, even if Biden doesn't choose to run. Well, it looks like he's going to run now. I think there's a tradition. You're right, and I think he falls within that tradition of, when 1952, when Adlai Stevenson lost, it was unbelievable the way he spoke about it. He quoted Lincoln and said, I was like the 6-year-old kid who stubs his toe in the dark and says, I'm too old to cry, but it hurts too much to laugh. He's a human being. When Hillary Clinton lost, most recently, I mean, she got up the next morning and walked into that Pennsylvania hotel across from the Penn Station. And my God, she was unbelievable. She woke up to the truth. And she woke up with the truth in her that she'd lost. And you could blame a lot of people. But she didn't try to lie.
Mm-hmm.
She told the truth to the people. And of all those years of watching people respected people like Goldwater and Humphrey,
Mm-hmm.
McCain, and incredibly good people, great perhaps people. And they all did it. They all bellied up to that camera. They may have cried in the back room
Mm-hmm.
because they were rejected. They wanted the country to like them, and the country didn't like them. Not enough. And they spoke their heart that was breaking at the time. They just did it. It's like the old detective show. Don't do the crime if you can't do the time. If you're not willing to admit you lose, don't run, because that's the deal.
Mm-hmm.
You got to respect what the voters decided on election day. It's like the British monarch. Even though prime ministers speak in the name of the crown, they have to visit every Wednesday. I think it's usually Wednesday. The crown, the monarch, and tell them what the policy is. It's a respect.
Mm-hmm.
They respect the crown respects the prime minister. It's a very token of respect. Our respect is when you win an election, you say so. When you lose an election, you say so. And Trump didn't do it because he didn't have any understanding. As Bob Woodward said the other day, he didn't understand things he didn't know, like the presidency
Mm-hmm.
and democracy. He didn't know that because he never studied them. He never had an interest in history.
Nor does he care about those. But he doesn't care. It's not even about knowledge.
He studied business. How do you make money at the edge?
Yeah.
How do you do it in a reciprocity deal, a transactional deal? How can I grab some money? And it's unbelievable. It's absolutely unbelievable. He doesn't pay his debts.
But he just doesn't care. I mean, there are plenty of rich people who care, who care about people and respect the institutions that they're involved in. He's a sociopath. I mean, that's where I keep coming back to. We talk about him sometimes as if he's just a president that we can criticize and analyze, but we've never had an actual sociopath as a president. And that's where you can connect all of this stuff to. A man who stands in front of a TV watching cops getting the crap beaten out of them on January 6th, and he's gloating because they're all doing it for him. That's a sickness. That's just not like...
How about this thing? Making fun of the guy's hands.
Yeah.
The guy's arms. That guy has an affliction, and he's treating him like a joke. Hey, what would he have done if he were around today, if he were in office today? He'd be making fun of Fetterman.
Yeah, but there was a time in this country where that kind of behavior would have been summarily rejected. Now, whatever it's 20, 30, 40, half the country, 50%, see him do stuff like that, or people make jokes about Paul Pelosi, and they're laughing. That's worse than one man being nuts. If Trump was around 30 years ago, he would have been gone in 5 minutes. I mean, think about what's his name, the guy who said macaca. Remember him? One word.
Yeah.
One word crashed a career. One word, and no one really but nobody knew what that. Yeah, right. George Allen. No one even knew what that word meant. We had to go look it up in order to be offended, and then we were offended once we looked it up. Think about what we live with today. Nothing is off limits anymore. And can we put that genie back in the bottle?
Well, I'll say one thing for George Allen, who I liked at the time. I do like him. He didn't throw his mother under the bus because he got it from his mother.
Or his wife. Trump is blaming Melania on Dr. Oz.
What do you call Jewish people that come from North Africa? The Sephardic.
Right.
Sephardic.
Mm-hmm.
And it was an old Sephardic reference for monkey. I mean, we know what it was. It was. I
didn't know what it was. It sounded like something I would be upset about. I actually had to go look it up because I was like, that doesn't sound good. That's not a good word, whatever it is. But today, we could do anything. We could say anything. These people could say anything. I mean, look at Carrie Lake. If I win, it's fair. If I lose, it's rigged. And she got that from Trump. She's a disciple.
Yeah, she's a disciple in the worst way.
Does that genie go back in the bottle? It's now okay to say elections are rigged.
I can tell you that she's off. I watched her. I think the comments she's made are about everything. And maybe the woman against her who may beat her.
It looks smart, that way. It looks that way right now.
She's a show, just like Trump. She's a show.
Mm-hmm.
She might have been devastating in a debate.
So with the midterms, we've all been dealing with years of, and I'm guilty of this too, of like Democrats don't know how to message. Why can't we be like Republicans? Democrats, instead of focusing on the economy and crime, they were focusing on democracy and abortion. But we saw, like in a poll last week, crime was at 3% in terms of what's important to voters. We saw the results this week. And it kind of looks like Democrats actually were pretty spot on with their focus on saving democracy and Rovember, and that Republicans were way off. We had Stuart Stevens on a couple of weeks ago, and we had this conversation, and he said, we could talk about messaging all we want, but look at the last several elections. Like, Democrats have won everything. So is it possible we should be looking at them going, maybe their messaging is actually pretty damn good? What do you think?
Look, let's talk about being the dominant political party for a minute. Why aren't the Democrats the dominant political party? And I think there's some things they're just not doing. You know, I'd say this to Biden if I was sitting down with him. You had the greatest success legislatively with infrastructure.
Mm-hmm.
It's something that everybody who drives, and most people drive,
mm-hmm.
you're on a highway and there are potholes or whatever, or there's subways that are clearly 100 years out of date. And the one thing we know is when we get down in the bottom of New York, God knows what's going on down there. We built 100 in the 19th century, this stuff. And there's water coming in because it's below sea level and it's just pouring in. What are we going to do? We've got to work on stuff. We got to rebuild. This country needs jobs. It needs real work, real pay, the kind of pay you get in construction. And why do you let us slop over a really good deal you made with Republicans? And let's talk about Build Back Better. Give me a break. That's the Democratic mistake. They don't stay on something that's heavily structured, that's real, that's tangible, that everybody can do. Every Republican used to believe in roads and stuff like that. It's something that could have sold the middle. It's how Huey Long got elected. It's how Franklin Roosevelt got elected, building Washington. They don't understand that building is essential to America. Growth is American. Growth, economic enterprise. Building things is the start of that. Look at Massachusetts. Why is Massachusetts come back from what it was of a decaying industrial area? It's got it made. It's got all the high tech, all the stuff, because it's building stuff. That's why California and Silicon Valley is real. And they don't want to. They do. I'm going crazy here. They don't want to celebrate that. What is wrong with workers and construction and creating a life that's better for people? You know, what is the problem? It's the left. I'm sorry. The left wants to talk about social issues and all these issues of rights. Fine. But that's not going to make you a majority party. What's making you a majority party is what the New Deal did and what Eisenhower did with the highway system and the space program with all the advantages that it gave us. And I keep thinking about, and also asking people to do good things for their country. That some of it is asking people to do something. Stop treating everyone like a victim. Why is everybody a victim? Everybody's a victim. What's going on here? No, they're not all victims, you know. So Biden, why didn't he just say free junior college? Forget this paying all people's bills, because a lot of kids don't go to college. Mm-hmm. Why should the plumber's kid pay for the law partner? What? You're kidding me. The law partner wants some help with their bills. Well, if everybody wants help with their bills, mm-hmm. Why not make starter college where you learn something you can make money on? And say to everybody, you know what, you can at your local college, Foothill College, whatever it's called, go there, I'm paying for it. That would have been something Jill would have been popular with, and it would have been real. But paying all these bills, where's that money coming from? We're borrowing it all. I just think there's something soft about the Democrats that isn't hard. And the squad's part of it. Mm-hmm. They want to do all these other social issues and paychecks and everything. Mm-hmm. You know.
Well, here's my counter to that. And this is.
By the way, Fetterman was for fracking. You may not like the way he got there, but he was for fracking.
Did he actually get there? I don't think he got there. That's the problem.
You may suspect his belief there, and maybe but yeah. He's doing it for for the votes because that's where the votes are.
But here's my counter to what you're saying, and I just want to say I agree with you in large part overall. I mean, Republicans, Trump talked about, it was infrastructure week for 208 weeks. Okay, Biden got it done, right? Biden got it done.
Yeah.
But my question before about messaging is like the Democrats, Biden made in their minds, a very calculated strategy, a calculated decision to focus primarily on saving democracy and the Dobbs issue, abortion, reproductive rights, and where that could lead to gay marriage bans and contraception bans. And in looking at the results this week, when everyone thought it was going to be a bloodbath, when we thought we were going to lose control, when people like me were saying it's going to be the beginning of the end of our democracy, and it's just the opposite, was that a smart choice for them?
But yeah, serendipities here. I mean, you're talking about they hit it. Do you think they calculated this? I don't think so. I think they thought they're going to get whacked. And I think they thought the economy was going to beat them, but they just couldn't say anything good about the economy from their point of view. They had nothing to say. And we got this bill, this inflation reduction bill that didn't reduce inflation. Okay, come on. That's all that was. And they didn't have anything to argue. So they argued their strengths. Biden got out there. Hey, look, there was a right way to sell democracy, which I would have done. How come when he went to Independence Hall, President of the United States never mentioned Liz Cheney, never mentioned the one person standing up against the bad guys, the most important person in the country, really, in that regard? Why didn't he? Because somebody sitting in the White House staff says, "Oh, we can't do that."
Well, there's your That's your calculation in another area. Exactly.
Why don't you? He would have been so credible if he'd said, "I want to say something tonight about democracy." Liz Cheney, because that's where I'm starting from.
Mm-hmm.
This woman's standing up for truth, and she's cost her political career.
He should have invited her to speak with him on that stage, on that platform. She's out there campaigning. I mean,
I know that she's campaigning for Democrats.
She's amazing.
He had a way to make his speech on democracy resound.
But do you think that, we in America, we tend to...
I don't think everything that the Democrats did is the reason they won. I think you're finding out somewhere in that interstices of things that went right.
Well, I was going to say, we in America, especially guys like you and I, who are political junkies, and we focus on things that the average person. I always remember Jay Leno going on the street and asking people, like, "Who's the vice president?" And a woman would say, "Hillary Clinton," and then he'd go, "Oh, Hillary Clinton. What do you do for a living, ma'am?" And she'd be like, "I'm a teacher." And he's like, "Oh, you're a teacher." But
he did that.
we have, especially today with the internet, we have like no tolerance, patience. We want everything right away. But if you could just sort of close your eyes and think about what's been happening, you see who was elected on the Democrat side: gays, lesbians, young black men like Maxwell Frost, other black men like the Maryland mayor, Native American, and you see what the other side is doing. Are we watching and witnessing this week that slow movement to that place where you're talking about, where we ultimately should be? It's not going to happen all at once, but we are seeing signs that America is moving in one direction, one party's moving with it, and the other party wants to make America great again, like you said before, which is really all about returning to the days when white men controlled everything and slavery.
Well, that's true, because look at the candidate in Wisconsin, Barnes, and Beasley in North Carolina. Mm-hmm. I mean, if the Democrats were ungenerous about it and just said, well, these are winnable states, these are not sacrificial lambs, we can win these, they would have ran white people probably. But they didn't. They said, look, the Democratic base in terms of voter turnout is African-American and women, and we're going to make sure they get reflected in our candidacies. We're not going to just make it all white men. So clearly they lost some elections you say might have been won otherwise. We don't know. So they're being, the Democrats are nominating people, and especially in blue areas. They're saying, look, if the Democrats are going to include in their coalition people of color, damn it, they're going to be candidates too. Mm-hmm. So part of that transition is paying a price for it. They are just going to pay the price. They say, look, maybe a white person would have done better in North Carolina or in Wisconsin. But they didn't do that. They ran the best candidate. They got the most votes in the constituency.
I mean, look at Westmore in Maryland. I mean, that's a huge victory for Democrats, for democracy, for the future, for diversity.
That was automatic.
What do you mean?
That was automatic. They were going to win that state. The Democrats were going to win that governor's race. That was not a close call.
Well, but I don't know how you can, what makes you say that with such certainty?
The Democratic state, how many Republican governors or senators are from Maryland? Senators. It's a state which has elected Democrats for a long term. My wife was party chair. I know it. It's a Democratic state.
Mm-hmm. But you could also look at the other key races that Tina Kotek in Oregon, Mark Wayne Mullen in Oklahoma, the Squad, got another Summer Lee, a progressive black woman in the Pennsylvania House. Like, the party overall is listening to the pulse of America, the changes in America, which is the very thing that's pissing the shit out of the white men who are losing their power and their control, the patriarchy, all the things that we all talk about.
Yeah, I think that's true. I think that's true in blue areas too, where
I mean, look at Michigan, the entire state.
Look what happened in Queens with AOC, and what happened in the 8th district up in Massachusetts. These are old, with Irish Italian type of people, regular Democrats from 20 years ago, 50 years ago, and they're getting knocked off by the new minorities, mm-hmm. and that's normal, and that's the way it should be. But there's a transition in American life, which is like, I watch some of the old time sports like boxing. It was the Irishmen, and then then it became the Italians, the Marcianos and everybody, the Rocky Balboas, and there was the black boxers. In that field, it's interesting. People that complain, why are no baseball players black? Because they're doing incredibly well in football, in basketball. The opportunities are incredible in these sports. And maybe they've just chosen, more rugged sports, more athletic sports. I don't know, but they're doing really well in those sports.
Well, it just seems to me that my big takeaway from this week is that you have a party that's dying and you have a party that's growing, expanding. It's not a complete straight line up, but if you just watch the trajectory over the last 5, 10, 15, 20 years, you just look at where when's the last time, how many Republicans out of the last 8 presidential elections actually won a popular vote? One, right? And what does that say about who's listening and who's watching and who's reacting?
Yeah, I think you're right. I think Pennsylvania is a pretty good. I look at the next election already as if it's DeSantis coming up north. He's down there in the peninsula. He's down there. Very good down there.
Yeah. Well,
Hispanic votes and all that. But he has to move north.
It's where woke goes to die, right? Florida.
They could be.
Woke and old people.
The tax breaks. And then they go where a lot of people go for the tax break. Republicans go. But he gets up to Pennsylvania. They get back to this way that why Trump won there and only narrowly lost is he understood the working guy. For some weird reason, he could figure him out. And Robert Orban, his campaign manager, figured this out the first time. He blew the election, I think, in 20 on his mismanagement of COVID. He just clearly was worried about the stock market more than anything else. He's worried about what the market would do to his reelection. Mm-hmm. He basically had other priorities, as Dick Cheney would say. I had other priorities, like with his draft. But I think he was doing that in a way that was wrong. It was wrong. He should have taken the country's interest first and looked out for the country's interest first. He didn't do it. So he played all these games with vaccinations and masks and everything, and everybody knew he was screwing around. He's screwing around. Pennsylvanians knew it at the edge. And so Biden, who was work a day, no surprises, beat him. So next time Biden's going to be 82 years old. DeSantis will be in his 50s, I think. That's going to be an interesting race.
People say he's Trump but smart, and I think he's not Trump.
He's younger
because Trump has charisma. You're a politics guy. You need charisma. He has nothing.
I recognize that when he gets on a stage with Trump will punch him really hard and try to shake him and turn him into Marco Rubio. That's what he'll try. So instead of repeating himself 6 times with this neocon crap of his, he got him doing that. Will he be able to shake him? Will the Trump Vaudeville Act, which is what it's going to look like now, we're going to stop reading it as American. They're going to see that act and go, yeah, that's fun for those people, those cultists. But that's not reflecting America. So I think people are going to start seeing it differently than they did before. It's not American. It's that cult. And so whoever wins that fight, that American League pennant race or National League race. Somebody's going to win that race. And it's going to be bloody. Trump's made a mistake of letting DeSantis grow too tall, and he will be able to fight him. And he didn't want that to happen. I don't know why he let it happen. He was too busy with his legal problems. But it's going to be interesting. I mean, you're going to have the Democrats are going to lose the House probably. The Republicans are going to come in and start probing Hunter Biden. That'll go on for weeks. They won't necessarily get anywhere, but they'll have a lot of smell, a lot of bad odor. Who's Uncle Jim? What's he about? What is he being with this? What are they doing in China? What's going on with it?
The laptop.
Well, that's right. He lost the laptop at the shop, and somebody else picked it up, and they denied it. And all of a sudden, so they'll have that game to play, and that'll be a big media. That'll be a media show. And then Trump will probably be. Thank God. I don't know if Merrick Garland's going to do it. I want to see Trump. I want Trump charged with a crime directly related to the insurrection, with denying the election. I don't want it about his taxes or his corporate stuff. I want him nailed on attempted murder of the vice president, because I think there's a clear case he sent that mob up on the hill to do damage.
Yes, but I'm going to paraphrase Rumsfeld. You fight the war with the army you have, not the one you want. Me personally, any indictment works for me. Any indictment.
We disagree. I want to nail him in the way that his own people say he tried to kill his vice president.
No, I agree with you.
Throw that to a DC jury. Give a DC jury that case. Go ahead, take that. And then for months you have.
But if I saw a headline this afternoon that said Trump indicted on tax evasion, I'm not going to have a bad afternoon, is what I'm saying. And neither will you. Neither will you.
No, Andy, that's where we disagree.
Okay.
That's where you and I disagree. Because I want the American people to change their mind about Trump. I don't care about catching them. I don't care. I want to catch them on something that the people who have been pulled around by their noses by this guy, who have said he won the election. Those people who are jockeying about that politically, I want them to say we were wrong. This guy is the bad guy, and I want that. And I think if Merrick Garland takes that to a jury, even if he loses the case, he would have such a powerful message. What did the guy do? He grabbed the steering wheel. He said, I want to go up there too. What for? How was he going to stop Mike Pence from signing the document? What's he going to do? How is he going to get him to not do that? When I see the African-American Capitol, I was a Capitol Police, but I know what those guys went through. A lot of those faces in that crowd were those people who voted the same way they voted. They're from the same economic class as they are, regular people. And they know those people. And they might hear these people rushing at me, look like my friends from home, from church. Who are these people? And they were coming out to do something. What were they going to do if they caught Pelosi herself? Does anybody think that Trump didn't want them to do something?
No.
2 hours he watched that on television. He wanted them to grab somebody. Would he call the police in then? Would he have called the police? Would Trump have called the police if he saw them doing something?
No.
See, that's it.
It's the
that's what I want to get him for.
The magnometers, whatever they call the X-ray things. Like when he was out doing his speech that morning, and he learned that there was armed protesters coming, and he wanted to take down the X-rays, and he said, "They're not coming to hurt me."
By the way, you know what that resounded with me? You're gonna love this, Andy. When I interviewed him in Green Bay, in the primaries in Wisconsin, and I asked him, how should the law treat a woman who chooses to have an abortion? There must be some form of punishment. That's what he said. There must be some form of punishment. And then I said, what about the guy being a little bit funny? There's usually a guy involved and somebody becomes pregnant.
Usually.
And he said, nothing should happen to him. Nothing should happen to him. I said, this is the most declarative statement this guy could make about his own life.
Yeah, but he's still making statements like that. This week he was interviewed and he said, if the Republicans win, I get all the credit. If they lose, I don't get any blame. This is his sociopathy. He's not a normal human being, so he'll say things like that.
But I meant more directly, he wanted to get off the hook on anybody. If there's an abortion, don't blame me. Don't punish me. I don't want to get punished. I mean, it's pretty obvious.
Do you think the party is finally going to dump him?
I know who wants to dump him, Mitch McConnell. I know I expect Rick Scott too, because he's now with DeSantis.
I mean, what about the New York Post? Did you see the New York Post today?
I heard about it. I heard about it already.
I mean, when Murdoch dumps you.
But we got a problem. If you're a Democrat, you got a problem. If you want to win, and that means beating him or DeSantis. Texas, forget Beto. Okay, all these people that Stacey Abrams and everybody runs all the time, and we all cheer for them because they're courageous. Just think about a couple of things. Florida's Florida. It's not a purple state. Texas is not a purple state. They're just not. So the two major states are gone. California and New York are still okay.
Mm-hmm.
Ohio's gone.
Mm-hmm.
It's gone. It's always, you could never be elected as a Republican without the support of Ohio, and they've always got it. So they start with Ohio.
Mm-hmm.
DeSantis problem. So can DeSantis penetrate into the old ethnic Philadelphia, Knights of Columbus, regular people? Can he win with the Reagan Democrats in Pennsylvania, in Ohio, in Wisconsin, and Michigan? That's the question.
Mm-hmm.
This is all going to come down 2 years from now, and it's going to come down to the whole question. Just think about this question, and you'll not like the answer. On one side, either DeSantis and a running mate like Nikki Haley, politically attractive,
mm-hmm.
or Chris Christie or whatever, somebody with an appeal up north.
Mm-hmm.
On the other side of the ticket, so DeSantis and Nikki Haley, and she's a great campaigner. And then on the other side, it's going to be Trump, 82, going on 86. And Kamala Harris.
But you mean Biden?
You can't hide her anymore. She would be the succession. That's what she'll look like,
mm-hmm.
the succession. That's a tough race.
Mm-hmm.
In those three states. It's a tough race.
But the flip side could be just as true. You could say Kamala Harris. I mean, look at women voting. Look at Gen Z that came out, young people this election, people of color. Kamala Harris on the bottom of the ticket. That's gonna get out the vote. That's going to energize people. It's going to energize the left.
You're just doing it now. I know how you're doing this. I have friends like you. A lot of my friends are exactly like you. You're just getting giddy. This is not the way it's going to work with most voters. They're going to say that person is not ready, not yet. And I want to see a little more conscious thinking about who the successor should be. And I think it's going to be a much trickier race.
But that's the nuance of it. On paper, you're right. You're 100% right on paper. But my favorite human on the planet the last few years has been the cliche suburban mom. The suburban mom is the one who says, I don't want people in office who do shit that I tell my children is horrible to do. That's not how I raise my kids. My kids did it, I'd smack them in the head. Those people... It doesn't matter, I think, and especially if those people are women of color, moderate Republicans, independents. I don't see it as that existentially problematic for the ticket.
Do you think the country is center left like I am, or is it center right?
I think it's center left. You look at all the major issues that we deal with, all the culture war issues. It's all 75% this, 75% that, 75% favor this. The pot, marijuana is I mean, look at pot. It's illegal now. It's in a lot of places. That's where we're moving. And the Republican Party is moving. It's just, it's like the Chuck Grassley party. It's like, just put these guys in a chair, sit them on the...
Look, aren't you shocked at how the issue of marijuana, how it's been able to deliver in California, where they have these shops and everything's different, and anywhere else, and it's prevalently available. I mean, you can buy it. That it hasn't caused any trouble yet.
Yeah,
I'm amazed
because it's not.
Booze causes trouble. Booze causes trouble all the time. It always does. How many traffic accidents are caused by booze? I mean, we just know they are. And the guy was drinking. How come the cops are really tough on people that have more than 2 or 3 drinks? They nail them coming out of the bar. There's so much. So it's recognized to be a health hazard.
And look at Gen Z.
Why is dope so far? How come there's not a train engineer so far, or a bus driver, or somebody who's taken it and has not been, of sound mind? I mean, aren't you amazed that there's been no trouble yet? I just think that's amazing.
I haven't. I mean, it's a culture war issue, but it's an issue that's energizing Gen Z. Whether it's pot, whether it's college education and student loans, the Democratic Party is speaking to this segment of our young population, and they're turning out. And if they continue to turn out as the old Republicans are dying, I mean, I don't mean the party dying. I mean, literally, the old white men are dying. Okay, it's like, who's going to be, in 10 years, who's going to be the thriving, energetic part of the Republican Party, the base of the Republican? Who's going to do that? Who's going to be there to carry that party into the next, millennium, century or whatever? So I think there's a real existential problem on the right, not on the left, and Trump has a lot to do with it.
What you put down is the traditional type. Center left, center right, traditional types. Bill Clinton, Al Gore, Hubert Humphrey, Adlai Stevenson. We're all sort of close left. We haven't had really a left-wing president or a hard right. Even Reagan became sort of normal. We were like the French. We're so much like the French. We love to fight with, but they always end up being somewhere in the middle. And so we're like that. We're a bourgeois country. We're a middle-class country, whether you like it or not. But we want to have some stern stuff there. We have some sturdier equipment for the challenges ahead. And part of what you want is a little tougher character than you're alluding to. The idea that everything new is good is weak. Everything new is not good. You can argue, as long as you're trendy, as long as you're with the new things, you're somehow hip. That's true.
Are you calling me weak, Chris Matthews?
No, I'm saying that you're hip. You're hip.
Get off my lawn.
Every change that's moving, every move is a good thing. Well, I'm not sure that.
No, I wouldn't say. I would agree with you on that. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that there's a movement in this country towards progress, real concern about real issues that affect real people every single day. And none of that is addressed by the right. And to the on top of that, they have become a batshit crazy, democracy raping, election denying bunch of cultists. And I think that's why you're seeing these elections. I mean, look, since 2020, people talk about, conventional wisdom. Conventional wisdom says Biden's going to lose the House. It's going to be a bloodbath, blah, blah, blah. 60 seats, 30 seats, whatever. Typically, it's on average 28 seats in the last 90 years. But nothing in the last 2 years, nothing has done anything but utterly defy conventional wisdom. And we saw that again this week. This was the best, most successful midterm election for a first-term president in how long? How many decades? Maybe even ever. And it's because of where the right is moving and where the left is moving. It's not all perfect, and I agree with you. It's not like everything the left does is great and progressive and for the future, and everything the right is doing is just talking, pissing in the wind.
No, but here's a question for you. How come big city mayors are all Democrats, right? Big city mayors are all Democrats.
Usually, yes.
They have been and will be in the future. Why can't they figure out the gang crime problem? Why can't they take accountability for it? When Philadelphia has 560 murders last year and 440 already this year, why don't they say, yeah, I'm mayor of Philadelphia, let me talk about that? Why doesn't the mayor come forth and talk, or the police commissioner, and talk about the problem instead of just saying, oh, that's just a Republican PR? Well, it isn't. And that's why Zeldin did well in New York. He did well. And a lot of those Democratic congressmen like Maloney got knocked off on that issue. Because it's real. It's real. And why don't Democrats, when they talk about social accountability, how about for dead people? How about that? And I don't understand it. Or homelessness. They want it to just go on and on and on without any change. They don't want to change. They're going to be losing elections finally in places like San Francisco over this, because people finally said, I am tired of the liberal talky, same old, nothing can be done. Something can be done. In Washington, D.C., which I love, why is DuPont Circle all tents? Why is every public area of property, wherever you go, very nice tents, somebody's paying for them, pretty nice, and junk all over the place? Is that going to be the future? Is that the Democratic future that you've been celebrating? Is that where we're heading? And people say, wait a minute, if that's part of the future, I don't want it.
Well, but what you're talking about, there's this term, bleeding heart liberal, right? And
no, you're laughing about it because you don't want to defend what you see when you walk down the street.
I'm not. You can't put me in any bucket. That's one thing about me. People cannot put me in a bucket because I'm not in any bucket. I agree with you 100%. I hate defund the police. I think my party does really stupid things. But when you're a bleeding heart liberal, it's very hard for some people. Where do they draw the line? And that line to some people is let's not do anything.
How about Abraham Lincoln? How about cutting him some slack?
What do you mean?
Why do you have to get rid of change some schools named? And why? What is this thing? This thing, we got to go after Abraham Lincoln. It's one thing, Stonewall Jackson. Okay, we can live with that. What about Lincoln? Why are we doing this?
Well,
read about Lincoln. He's a good guy.
Every time someone brings up Abraham Lincoln, I always think of that thing Trump said where he talks about, like, I am the most persecuted president in history. It's like, really? I think Mr. Lincoln might have a difference of opinion. But before we go, and we're running out of time, I want to ask you about...
I got to go, too. I'm going to go teach.
What are you teaching?
I'm going around to colleges. I was at Providence College last week. I'm going to go to College of Charleston.
Oh, cool. So the old cliche, the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result, right? So next month, we're going to have a Georgia runoff. Prior to the Georgia runoff, we're probably going to have Trump announce he's running for president. He's going to spend the next 4 weeks making everything about him. He's going to tell Georgia voters exactly like he did last time that the election is rigged, and he's probably going to tip it to Warnock just like he did last time. We're literally heading down the exact same road we did 2 years ago. And the Republican Party...
One exception. Didn't Kemp get his 50%?
Kemp did. Right. He's
so
not
going to be in this job.
He's not on the ballot, but Trump is. Trump is going to be on the ballot. Trump's going to deliver Georgia for us again. That's my prediction.
I agree with you. It's going to be more easy than you think. If without Kemp on the ballot, do you think the regular, I know that's a hard term in Georgia, a regular Republican doesn't like Trump, do you think he's going to make an effort to go vote for Walker?
No.
I'm not going to show up.
Yeah.
Because I'm not going to go waste 20 minutes of my life to vote for Walker.
Especially if Trump is going to spend the next 4 or 5 weeks telling you it's not worth it because it's all rigged anyway. I mean, it's literally the same thing.
If Cortez wins out in Nevada, it may not matter at all.
All right. So the other question before we let you go.
It won't decide control. It won't decide control.
Well, hopefully you're right. Hopefully Masto's going to pull it out and we're fine. But that's the big difference over 2020. But I'm just talking about the runoff itself. We're heading down the same... The playing field is exactly the same. Same players, same outcome, same strategy. The second question we ask to get a window into people's souls is through music. Music really tells us who people are. Who's your top 5 musical artists of all time?
Oh my God. All the guys from the 30s, Gershwin, everybody.
Mm-hmm. Benny Goodman.
No, earlier than that. I mean, I think about Gershwin and Jerome Kern. And I just think that whole crowd, like they were like the founding fathers. They all came along together. Tin Pan Alley. My God, unbelievable. I like West Side Story too. I mean, I think there's something modern there. But I also like Rachmaninoff a lot, the second, and I think I used to listen to that every night before I went to play basketball. When I came back from basketball, I'd always take a shower and listen to Rachmaninoff before I went out to dinner.
I always remember the commercials from the 70s, those call 1-800 and get this fabulous collection of classical music, like Rachmaninoff. And then they would always...
I know who that guy was. That their British actor.
Yeah.
I think Rachmaninoff, and I love classical. I'm listening to Symphony on Sirius XM all the time.
Mm-hmm. So my last thing I want to say to you before we truly...
But I love the Beatles. I love the Beatles and all that. Everything from the 60s.
Thank you.
Everything.
Somebody says the Beatles.
Everything from the 60s.
Taylor Swift?
Not up to that.
Okay.
I don't know anything about it. Why are you doing it to me? So you're showing me you know all this stuff that makes you part of the...
I know nothing. I watch the Grammy Awards now. I know nobody. I don't even know the host anymore. I feel like I'm aged like a dinosaur. I got to tell you this really funny, quick story, or poignant story. When my daughter was about 1.5 years old, back in the Hardball days, I was obsessed with your show. I think it was one of the greatest political shows on television. And you are a truly amazing host, and you lived up to that name of the show every night because that's what we needed. We needed somebody to push back, and I loved when you had Republicans on in particular.
Why it worked? Because I am crusty, and because I am a little more conservative
that's
than
the
my
quote.
colleagues. And I will argue. But
you have to.
But I also I treated them all the same. I treated them all just like I did Trump. And it was because I didn't have that weird sort of grimace and big fat cheek that a lot of these people have. They come on and they show all their attitude. Don't show your attitude if you're going to ask tough questions. Don't show it. Just casually ask the question.
Yeah, but you used to push. I mean, I would watch your show, and I would think like, oh my God, they're going to get up and walk out on Chris. They're going to get up and walk out on Chris, and they never did. They never did. Who pushes back like that today? And I wish you were on TV. I mean, I would love to see you over the last couple of years.
I'm doing morning show a lot. I've been doing morning show every week.
But I mean, you should have your own. You should have your own show. That's just my thing. But so I would sit and watch you. I would watch your show all the time, and my daughter, who was like a year and a half, would sit on my lap and she'd watch with me. She became obsessed with you to the point where I went online once and ordered from eBay an 8x10 black and white of you and put it in her crib, because when your show would come on, she would get as excited as a kid today watching.
Okay, here, you know what she liked? I can predict, even though I don't know her. They like, because I heard this from young people. Two nice things people said about the show. One were women who said, my husband watched it till the end. That was always gets to me. The guy, his last day on earth, he's watching Hardball.
Wow.
The other were the kids. And why the kids like me? Because I would say, let's play Hardball.
Well,
they love the let's play Hardball.
But there's something, now that I'm listening to you and I'm trying to myself think, like, what was it? There's a certain Sesame Street, don't kill me about this, but there's a certain Sesame Street-ish thing about your voice that I think could be very appealing in the ways that it's very animated and how you speak. But it was crazy. This kid, if I would just mention your name, her eyes would light up, like I was talking about Blippi or Big Bird or something.
Say hello to her.
So
say hello.
She was a big fan. Chris, you are truly an inimitable. You're a one-of-a-kind guy and a very important voice still in politics. I'm so glad you came on. This was a big thrill for me to talk with you. Take care.
Thanks for having me. Good luck with you.
So there you have it. Episode 24 in the can. We'd love to hear your thoughts, so leave us a message at 845-307-7446. Tell us what's on your mind, what you like, what you don't like, any suggestions. You can also do that by emailing us at backroomAndy@gmail.com or tweet to me at Andy Ostroy. Leave a review, too, if you like the pod. Reviews are very important with podcasts, and we definitely would love your feedback, no matter how you feed it back to us. I want to thank my co-producer, engineer, and editor, Maddie Rosenberg, associate producer, Jen Hamoud, Cricket Langell for our artwork, Andy Hollander for our kick-ass music, Patricia Wind and the Epicurean for the Backroom Studio, and a big, big thank you once again to our guest, Chris Matthews. So keep your eyes on Washington, Hollywood, and your own backyards, and we hope you'll join us again next time. Have a great week.